My name is Ronan Hale. I am 71 years old. I'm the kind of man who reads property deeds for pleasure and still irons his handkerchiefs. Some call that outdated. I call it careful. It was Christmas Eve in Westport, Connecticut. My daughter insisted on hosting dinner this year. New home, big kitchen, fancy stone countertops, and a dining room chandelier you could see from the street. I came early with wine and peppermint bark, trying to look like a guest, not a burden. They let me sit at the end of the table by the window. The house smelled of ham and rosemary. Voices rose and fell like the tide. Laughter that felt rehearsed greetings that ended too quickly. A neighbor brought a pecan pie, set it down, and whispered something about ring cameras catching the delivery guy knocking 3 times. I smiled politely. Everything in this neighborhood had an audience and not just the in-laws. About halfway through dinner while carving the ham, my phone buzzed once in my front pocket. I glanced down out of habit. A message from my bank, short and strange. Attempted transfer flagged $17,800. Escrow hold. I blinked at it, unsure if it was fraud, a mistake, or something worse. The number wasn't huge, not for Westport, but it wasn't small either. And escrow, I hadn't authorized any transfer. Not 30 seconds later, the doorbell chimed. A ring alert echoed faintly across the room, cheerful but intrusive. My daughter rose to check the door, but by the time she looked out, no one was there. I folded my napkin. Think I left something in the car? I said more to no one than to anyone in particular. Nobody asked questions, not about me, not anymore. I stepped outside into the cold, my breath forming clouds as I crossed the driveway. The holiday lights from the neighbors' yards flickered in slow sync. A plastic reindeer had tipped over in the lawn next door. It looked how I felt. I got into my car, shut the door, and just sat for a moment, hands on the wheel. The cabin was silent. I tapped the message again. The escrow hold was real. I checked my account. No funds had moved yet, but something had been prepared. There's a kind of silence old men know. It comes just before the real things happen. I'd heard that silence the day my wife passed. I heard it again now, even with the holiday laughter muffled through brick and glass behind me. I turned the key and drove away, no headlights, no music. Just me and the road back to my old house, the one I hadn't lived in for nearly 2 years. Still owned it, still had a key, still kept everything important there. No one called after me. No one checked the driveway. I was expected to disappear sometimes, like a dog returning to the same patch of dirt it always dug. The drive was only 11 minutes. I counted. The roads were quiet. Most people were home with Coco and family and matching pajamas. When I pulled up to the old place, everything looked exactly as I left it. Shutters needed repainting. The porch light still flickered. I told the HOA I'd fix that light by Thanksgiving. I didn't. Inside, the dust greeted me like an old friend. I didn't bother flipping on the ceiling light. Instead, I walked through by memory. Past the coat closet. Past the broken wall sconce I never did replace. Into the hallway where the second bedroom used to be an office. That's when I heard voices. Familiar ones. From the other side of the wall. I froze. She gave me the bottle, my son-in-law whispered. It looks identical to his old pills. He won't know. He's been off lately anyway, my daughter said, her tone clipped. If he takes a wrong dose, no one will question it. Probate clears in what, 6 weeks, he asked. Less if the house moves quick. The appraiser's number came in at 1.2. That's before staging. My heart didn't race. It paused. They were inside my old house. And they were planning to kill me. I backed away, each step exact measured. I didn't feel fear. Not the screaming kind. No, what I felt was cold focused. The kind of stillness I'd only known once before when I saw a man in court lie on the stand and the judge didn't catch it, but I did. I stepped back out onto the porch, closed the door quietly, and drove. Not home. Not yet. I had things to collect. I didn't go straight home. I drove to the gas station off the post road, the one with flickering pumps and broken receipt printers. Parked under the only light still working, I pulled out a steno pad from the glove box and started writing. Not because I'd forget, because I knew they were counting on that. I wrote the phrase $17,800 escrow hold. Underneath, I wrote one Fei Hai Trio Dola appraisal from 2022. Then I drew 2 boxes, one for intent, one for method. Because this wasn't about money. Not really. It was about control and shortcuts. And the fact that somewhere along the way, my daughter and her husband decided my expiration date was negotiable. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Searched the word escrow. A few old documents popped up, refinance from 2 years ago, a termite inspection I'd paid out of pocket. But at the top of the results, was something new. A forwarded message from Lester Glass Properties. Subject line: Rehail property rush close potential. Attached a pre-filled purchase agreement, price $975,000. Contingencies waived, closing date pending. My hands didn't shake, not once, but I felt something shift in me, a narrowing of vision, the kind you get when you're reading fine print in a dim courtroom. Someone had tried to sell my house. And not just any sale. A quick sell, far below value, scrubbed clean of inspections, just waiting for me to disappear. I turned off the screen. Then I drove home. Except it wasn't home anymore. The lights were on when I pulled into the driveway. The back porch lamp cast long shadows onto the gravel. A car I didn't recognize was parked along the curb. No HOA sticker, California plates. I used my key, stepped inside quietly. The smell hit me first. Not food, not pine-scented air freshener. It was mint and bleach, antiseptic and precise. From the hallway I heard voices. I moved slowly. I knew the layout. They didn't. My daughter's voice came sharp through the air vent. We need to make sure it's consistent. If he mixes those pills up, it won't flag the pharmacy. Then my son-in-law, I told you I switched them this morning. They're identical. One just hits harder. How long, she asked. Depends. He's already forgetful. If he doubles a dose. His voice trailed off into a smirk I couldn't see, but I could hear. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and took a breath through my nose. My own daughter. My only child. And here she was, mapping out my accidental overdose like a project brief. They weren't even panicked. They weren't whispering out of fear. They were whispering out of routine. I stepped backward, careful, silent. Out the back door, down the steps, across the gravel. I didn't stop until I was back in the car, this time in the dark. This time I wasn't wondering anymore. This time I had a plan. I didn't sleep that night. I brewed coffee at 3 a.m. and opened the file cabinet I hadn't touched since I moved out. Third drawer down beneath the old appraisal photos was the thing I needed, my dictation recorder, the kind lawyers used before smartphones. Silver, scuffed, voice activated. Still worked, batteries full. I clicked record and said, "This is Ronan Hale. If you're hearing this, it means I got ahead of something." Then I clicked stop. I placed it in the pocket of the old blazer I kept for funerals and zoning board meetings. Same one I wore when I signed my wife's DNR. Same one I would wear to my own death, apparently, had they gotten their way. Next came the papers. I pulled out the trust documents, the original will, the LLC formation papers for the house. I'd set that up long ago, back when I thought I'd build a little portfolio and leave it to grandkids who cared. One folder was labeled Codicils blank. That one made me smile. I called my attorney at 6:30 in the morning. He answered on the third ring. "Something wrong, Mr. Hale?" "Yes," I said, "but I plan to fix it." By 11 a.m., we drafted a new codicil and submitted it to the county clerk's office via secure upload. A printed copy would be notarized and delivered in person. It contained 3 lines that mattered. If my death occurs under unusual or disputed circumstances, all asset distribution is frozen, pending an independent medical and legal investigation. The LLC controlling the house reverts to 51% ownership under my direct authority if fraud is suspected. No sale, escrow release, or title transfer may proceed without personal signature and video verification. It was enough to halt everything legally and cleanly. But I wanted more than prevention. I wanted proof. That night I called home, or rather, I called their home, the one they stole, with smiles and casserole invitations. My daughter answered. Her voice was sweet, sweeter than usual. "Dad, are you okay?" I got a little turned around, I said slowly. "Thought I'd come by. I miss the boys." "The boys?" she asked. "I didn't have grandsons." "Right," I muttered. "Wrong house. Never mind." There was a pause. "Dad," she said more carefully, "you can come stay the night if you want. We'll fix you a plate." I let the silence hang, then said that'd be nice. When I arrived, the guest room was made up like a hotel suite. Fresh sheets, water bottle on the nightstand, my old slippers by the bed, but they weren't mine. They were new. As if someone planned for me to come back, but only once. I smiled and waved. My son-in-law gave me a side hug. "You're looking sharp, Ronan." I didn't reply. He patted my back as he led me in. "We've got your pills ready on the table." I didn't take them. Not yet. I slipped the recorder into my jacket pocket, switched it on with one subtle thumb movement. Then I said loud enough for the air vent and ring camera to hear, "I don't know what I'd do without you two. I really don't." I slept with one eye open and the recorder on. Every whisper, every soft click of cabinet doors, every accidental slip of truth. I wanted it all, not for vengeance, for documentation. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in my world it's better served notarized. By morning I had 2 full hours of tape murmurs about insurance mentions of switching pills, even a half-joking remark about natural causes if the dosages did their job. At sunrise I stepped out onto their porch and called my attorney again. "Push the codicil," I told him. "Let's lock it in. I want 3 copies printed, 1 filed, 1 hand-delivered, and 1 notarized in person." He didn't ask questions. Before noon I was sitting in his office, a quiet colonial in downtown Westport with crown molding and windows that didn't quite seal. He laid out the documents on the table, crisp paper thick as legal ethics already printed in triplicate. The codicil began plainly. "In the event that Mr. Ronan Hale passes under contested, suspicious, or non-medically certified conditions, all asset transfers and estate proceedings shall be held in probate pending external legal and medical review." Simple, neutral, enough to terrify anyone with a guilty conscience. Next came the trust amendments. We wrote in an escalation clause if fraud or coercion was suspected by any independent party lawyer, notary, even a ring camera, the trust would freeze asset disbursement and suspend beneficiary access until resolution. I added a final clause to the LLC operating agreement, one that restored 51% control of the real estate holding company directly to me under emergency provision. Signed, dated, delivered. It took me 3 strokes of a pen to block everything they were building behind my back. I sat there, palms flat on the wood table, watching my lawyer seal the envelope. He glanced up. "Do you want to activate the escrow freeze notice?" "Not yet," I said. "I want them to think they've won just long enough to hang themselves." Back home, or rather in their home, my daughter greeted me like I'd returned from war. "Dad, how are you feeling? Need your meds?" I nodded absently, then let the pills sit untouched on the end table for exactly 47 minutes before I slipped them one by one into a labeled plastic bag. Evidence, plain and clinical. My son-in-law came home from a walk around 6. He brought groceries, mostly bland, easy-to-swallow food. He asked if I needed help with my evening routine. Said it with that tone. That overly helpful tone people use when they're hoping you won't notice they're maneuvering you. I smiled and said I've written everything down. Old habit. Makes things easier. He nodded. He didn't ask what I'd written. Good. At midnight while they were asleep, I slipped into the guest bathroom, the one near the garage. I replaced the mirror-side ring panel battery and reset the angle. Pointed it slightly lower, toward the hallway. Then I went into their bedroom, and while standing near the vent whispered a few clear phrases into the air. "He's not as sharp as he used to be. Just wait till after the new year. We can say he mixed up his prescriptions." I smiled into the silence and slipped back to my room. The camera caught it all. The next morning brought a subtle shift. At breakfast, my daughter asked if I'd considered updating the will just to make sure everything's in order. She offered to help. I told her I already had. I told her a notary was coming by for the holiday blessing. She blinked once, smiled, then dropped a spoon. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Another alert. This time, a bank warning. Escrow recipient account flagged for duplication, hold pending verification. Attached $17,800 second attempt. I grinned. They were getting nervous. That evening, I opened the bedroom drawer and retrieved my folder full of wire receipts, maintenance bills, land registry extracts, and notarized copies of the LLC reinstatement. Every fix I'd ever made to that house, every cent I'd poured into repairs, roofing, plumbing, it was all cataloged. Not for sentiment. For valuation. If someone tried to argue that I wasn't the rightful stakeholder, I'd drown them in invoices. I flipped through the last tab, the county clerk confirmation email. The new codicil was already logged and time-stamped. That meant it was real and discoverable. I printed out a second copy and folded it into an envelope. Tomorrow night it would sit center table at dinner. The next 24 hours moved with surgical calm. I recorded 2 more whispered exchanges between them, one in the pantry, one on the back porch. Both hinted at what-ifs, as in, what if we wait till after the HOA meeting? What if his records get lost? I did not confront, I observed. I drank my coffee. I said thank you. I complimented the gravy. Then I smiled as I made one final phone call to the notary. Tomorrow night, 6:45, I said. I'll be in a blazer. Look for the Ring camera. I dressed for dinner like I was going to court. Same navy blazer from the notary visit. Same pressed slacks I wore to my wife's memorial. A white button-down, starched and clean. No tie, just dignity. In the pocket, snug and silent, was my recorder, fully charged. I added one more thing, a folded copy of the codicil sealed in an envelope. I slid it into my inside pocket. It rested like a second spine. They met me at the door, smiling too much. My daughter even touched my cheek. My son-in-law took my coat like we were friends. "You look sharp, Dad," he said. I smiled, nodded. "Sometimes I still get dressed up on Sundays," I replied. "Out of habit." They laughed. I didn't. We sat down early. The ham was already carved. The table was staged like something out of a magazine ad. Too perfect. Every fork matched. Even the cranberry sauce had been portioned into small ramekins. I waited until the first toast had been made, until wine had passed lips, until they were comfortable. Then I tapped my glass. They looked over. I just wanted to say, I began slowly, how grateful I am to be here. This old brain of mine doesn't always keep up anymore, but tonight, I remember how lucky I am. My daughter smiled like a Hallmark card. My son-in-law tilted his head with practiced concern. "That's sweet, Dad," she said, "and you've been doing great lately. No one would even know, right?" She looked at her husband when she said it, not at me. I nodded. "You're kind. Even when I forget things, pills, appointments, dates, you've always helped." He jumped in too fast. "We're happy to. You know we just want what's best for you." I cut a slice of ham. "I know." After dinner, while they cleared the dishes, I stepped outside for some air. I left the door slightly open behind me. The hallway ring cam would catch my shadow crossing. I let it. Then I pulled out my phone. New notification from the HOA app. A message titled "Holiday Reminder, Noise Guests and Parking." They do this every year, but this one felt different. "We've received a few quiet concerns from the next door group regarding increased noise levels, traffic congestion, and possible disruptions. Please be mindful of your guests' parking behavior and late-night activity. HOA fines may apply." I smirked. One neighbor had clearly seen something, or thought they had. Probably the same one who posted a thread last month titled "WHOs Living in the Gray Sedan." That was me, of course. Perfect. Back inside, I found my daughter scrolling through her phone on the couch. Her husband was pouring bourbon, humming to himself. "Do you remember," I said casually, "when we used to bake on Christmas Eve? That apple crumble?" My daughter looked up, startled. "You remember that?" I nodded slowly. "Of course. Some things come and go, but smells stay. Cinnamon. Brown sugar." She blinked. Emotion crossed her face for the first time in months. Real or staged, I wasn't sure. He walked in and sat beside her. "Hey, Ronan," he said, "did you take your pills yet?" I looked at the bottle on the table. "Oh, I think I might have. Or did I? I can't remember." "No worries," he said quickly. "Let me get you another dose." I picked up the bottle before he could. "Actually," I said, voice low, "maybe you could show me what these are again." He paused. "They're the same as always." "Same color, yes. But this label's different." I turned it slowly. "These were filled 3 days ago." My daughter walked over. "Dad, we've talked about this. Your old refill wasn't strong enough anymore." I stared at her. Then I nodded. "Of course." I placed the bottle down, label up. Then I looked up and said gently, "Do you still have that group chat with Aunt Lynn? The one where we used to send old photos?" She frowned. "What I mean? I don't know. Probably." "Would you check? I was thinking of that photo of the boys on the sled." She hesitated. "Dad, I don't think now's." "Please." She sighed, opened her phone, and tapped the screen. For a second, just a second, I saw it. A message bubble, a candy emoji, followed by the word, "Switch done, he'll sleep deep." Then she flipped it closed. But the ring cam above the living room shelf had already caught the reflection in her glasses. Later that night, I waited until they were in the kitchen talking about me like I was deaf. "He looked at the bottle longer than usual," she whispered. "He's slipping," he replied. "He'll forget by morning." That's when I stepped in. "Actually," I said, "I remember everything." They froze. I held up my phone. A video was already playing. Their voices, their laughter, their plan. I didn't speak again, just smiled, and walked back to my room. I'd asked the notary to arrive at 6:45 sharp, holiday traffic. Or not, she was punctual, always had been. I knew her from the town council days. Linda Gaffney. 2 kids, no nonsense, wore chunky silver rings and a heavy wool coat even in spring. She stepped into the house like a school principal entering a noisy classroom, carried a leather folder under one arm, her notary seal in the other. My daughter froze when she saw her. "Oh, how can I help you?" Linda smiled, that small, polite smile civil servants wear when they're about to ruin your day. "I'm here to witness a codicil execution," she said simply. My son-in-law appeared behind her holding a mug of cider. He didn't say anything, just squinted as if he'd walked into the middle of someone else's mistake. I stood from the armchair. "Right on time, Linda. Thank you." She nodded and looked around the room. "You want to do this somewhere quiet?" I glanced at the table, still set for dessert. The silver was real, the centerpiece fresh. "No," I said. "We'll do it right here." They watched as I placed the envelope on the table. It looked like nothing, just paper, ink, a red seal on the flap. But they knew. Even before I unfolded it, they knew. "This is a codicil," I began, voice steady. "Legally binding, witnessed by this notary. Filed already with the county clerk, effective immediately." My daughter's voice cracked first. "Dad, what is this about?" "It's a contingency," I said. "In case of unexpected circumstances. Sudden death, confused intent, misplaced medication." I let the last phrase hang. Linda clicked her pen. I turned to my son-in-law. "You work in tech, don't you?" He nodded slowly. "Then you know about freezes. This codicil includes an escrow freeze order. Nothing moves, not 1 cent, unless I sign off in front of a live witness. Not email, not phone, not trust." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I placed a second envelope beside the first. This one was thicker, labeled exhibits. Inside, a copy of the trust instrument, the LLC operating agreement, restored with 51% control to me. Printed ring camera screenshots. 1 bank alert, transcript flagged unauthorized activity. A group chat screenshot with the candy emoji circled in red. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The silence broke when the doorbell rang again. This time it was the HOA liaison, a polite woman with steel hair and too many bracelets. She looked surprised to see so many people. "Hi. Sorry to intrude. We got a message on the app, said there was a public legal action occurring during a member holiday event. We're required to observe if it may affect community stability." Her voice was friendly, but her eyes were sharp. Behind her, I saw a neighbor peeking through their blinds. The world was watching. "Perfect." I turned to the notary. "Shall we begin?" She handed me a pen. I signed the codicil again, this time, in front of all of them. She affixed her seal, pressed hard, and dated it December 24th. Then I pointed to the guest bathroom. "In there," I said, "top shelf, medicine cabinet, you'll find a small white bottle, unlabeled, doesn't match my prescribed dosage. Go ahead." My daughter's face drained of color. My son-in-law set his mug down a little too fast. The notary didn't flinch. She motioned to the HOA rep. "Would you mind observing?" Together they disappeared down the hall. 30 seconds later she returned with the bottle in hand, gloved in a tissue. "No label," she confirmed. "Pill type, white round scored. Not in a prescription container." I nodded. I took out the final piece, a small pocket audio recorder, the same one that had been in my blazer for the last 3 nights. I clicked play. Their voices filled the room, hushed, precise, indisputable. They're identical. One just hits harder. If he doubles a dose, it won't flag. Probate clears in, 6 weeks? No one moved. Even the holiday candles seemed to flicker differently. My daughter whispered, "Dad, we were joking." I looked her in the eye. "Then you picked a poor punchline." My son-in-law finally spoke. "This is entrapment." I smiled thinly. "No. This is documentation. And documentation is what separates memory from myth." He turned to the HOA rep. "You can't allow this kind of scene." She raised a hand. "This isn't a scene. It's a protective action under codified estate law. Your HOA fines may apply." He blinked. "Yes," she added. "For the disruption, that'll be $42. The next hour was a blur of silence and slow collapse. Linda packed up her notary seal. The HOA rep left, but not before taking a photo of the medicine bottle for the board's archive. I let her. I remained standing at the table. They say the best time to plan your estate is before anyone wants it, I said aloud. No one replied. I pulled out a sheet of paper, the ring log export, and handed it to my daughter. Your porch camera caught the pill drop. The timestamp matches your message. Her hands shook as she took it. I turned back to the table, picked up the envelope, slid everything back in. Dinner was lovely, I said. I'll send a copy of tonight's filing to your attorney. That night I went home. Not to their house, not to my old house. To a hotel near the marina where no one asked questions and the staff brought hot towels without making eye contact. I slept 8 hours, dreamless. And when I woke up, I made one phone call to a prosecutor I knew from years back. I gave him 3 names: the pharmacy, the escrow agent, and my daughter. I've always believed justice doesn't wear boots, it wears slippers. It arrives quietly, knocks once, and lets the paperwork do the rest. That morning, the slippers came in the form of 2 plainclothes officers in dark coats. They didn't use sirens, no handcuffs, no shouting. They walked up the drive like mailmen and rang the bell. My daughter answered. They asked for my son-in-law by name. He was in the kitchen pouring oat milk into his coffee. They didn't even make him spill it. The arrest was calm. It wasn't even called an arrest detained for questioning related to attempted fraud and medical endangerment. But I knew what it was. He tried to ask questions. They didn't answer. He looked at me once, just once, as they walked him out. Not with anger, not even with fear. Just disbelief. As if he couldn't understand how a man who forgot where he left his slippers could orchestrate all of this. That's the thing about age. They forget what we've seen, what we've buried, what we're capable of when no one thinks we're watching. By noon, my attorney had filed a request for protective hold with the probate court. It referenced 3 exhibits. The codicil notarized and already logged. The ring footage time-stamped and transcribed. The unauthorized escrow communication complete with a forged digital signature attempt. That's what tipped it legally. They'd tried to mimic my approval on the $17,800 escrow, but they'd used a copy-paste of my old PDF initials. Sloppy, arrogant. Perfect. At 2:15, I got a call from Lester Glass Properties. Mr. Hale, the woman said. Her voice was shaky. We just received a formal freeze notification from your counsel. Are you withdrawing your property? No, I said. It was never on the market. She exhaled. I'm sorry, she said. We were told. Never mind. The file's closed. Send me a copy of the offer form, I added, for my records. Of course. She hung up. I opened my notes app. Lester offer equals $975,000 under market by $225,000. They weren't just trying to take the house. They were trying to flip it. That evening, the HOA email came. Subject: Notice of fine holiday disruption, December 24. Message: Due to involvement of external authorities and HOA disruption protocols triggered during a community event, a fine of $42 will be applied to Lot 11. Lot 11 was me. I clicked Pay Now. Entered my card. The screen blinked. Thank you. Your payment has been processed. $42. Worth every cent. I walked the neighborhood that night, pulled a beanie low over my ears, let the cold settle into my joints. I passed one neighbor walking a dog. He nodded, once hesitated, then said, I saw your situation yesterday. I nodded back. Hope you're all right, he added. I am, I said, and the house is staying in the family. He smiled. Glad to hear it. And that was that. When I got home, my real home, I put on the kettle, pulled out the old file folders, labeled each one LLC, active, trust, finalized, probate, pending, evidence, indexed. Everything had a place. Everything had a chain of custody. The codicil had done exactly what I needed it to: freeze movement, trigger scrutiny, and halt anyone looking to fast-track grief for profit. My daughter hadn't called, but I saw her car parked outside the police station later that night. She waited 2 hours, then left alone. That told me what I needed to know. I received the ring export 2 days later. Their support team emailed it in a neat folder: video-audio transcripts. Subject line: Device captured December 22, requested export. I downloaded every file, labeled them, then burned 3 copies to physical USBs. One went in the safe, one to my lawyer, one to the police. I kept nothing in the cloud. Nothing hackable, nothing guessable. I didn't win this by being fast. I won by being slow, thorough, and harder to replace than they thought. On December 27th, the town clerk called. "Mr. Hale, just confirming you wanted the updated LLC records reflected under individual control." "That's right," I said. "So you're reestablishing 51% under personal governance?" "Correct. Not through the trust." "No," I said. "The trust holds the asset. I hold the steering wheel." She paused, then said understood. And just like that, I had my house back. Not just legally. Structurally. The new year came without a toast. I didn't buy champagne, didn't watch the ball drop, didn't wear a paper hat. Instead, I watched the mailbox. On January 2nd, I got 3 letters. The first, a notice of filing from the probate court. Case entry confirmed, codicil and trust honored, protective hold acknowledged. The second from the county clerk's office confirming the LLC ownership record had been updated to reflect my 51% control. And the third, a small white envelope from the Homeowners Association. Inside was a receipt. Payment received $42. Thank you for maintaining community peace. I laughed harder at that one than I had in years. Later that day, I walked into First Equity Title and Trust where they'd held the escrow account. They didn't recognize me at first, which was good. I wasn't there to shout. I asked to speak with someone in compliance. I brought my folder. I showed them the escrow transfer attempt, the digital signature mismatch, and the copy of my codicil clause stating that no transaction was valid without my personal in-room signature and notarized approval. The young man behind the desk swallowed hard and nodded as I spoke. "This entire thing," I said, "almost happened without me. That should concern you." He nodded again. I handed him a new document. Escrow Instruction Addendum, all Hale Trust assets require double witness release. He didn't even ask why. He just made copies. By mid-January, the district attorney had filed a motion to formally investigate my son-in-law for attempted fraud, medical endangerment, and falsification of estate intent. They used legal phrases like probative urgency and suspicion of calculated coercion. But the public didn't care about those terms. The public cared about the Ring video because someone on Nextdoor leaked it. I didn't know who. Could have been a neighbor. Could have been the HOA liaison. Could have been the notary herself. She always had a subtle flair for justice. Either way, it went viral in a niche kind of way. Elderly man tricks family who tried to kill him for his house. The headline missed the nuance, but the comments didn't. They said things like, "Smartest man on the block, never underestimate old people who read the fine print. This is why I have a trust and a gun." I didn't reply, but I read every single comment. My daughter sent one letter, handwritten, no return address. "Dad, I don't know what to say. I didn't plan any of it, not really. I was scared. Floyd said we'd lose everything if you lived too long. I didn't know how to stop it. I'm sorry." I read it once. Then I placed it in the evidence, indexed folder, just in case. I didn't write back. At the end of January, the court approved a motion to permanently freeze probate until a forensic review of the trust's prior access attempts was complete. My lawyer sent me the formal summary. At this time, no beneficiary may access, transfer, or assign any interest in the Hale estate without direct order from this court or Mr. Ronan Hale in verified physical presence. Exactly how I wanted it. Control wasn't about possession. It was about delay. And I now controlled all time within my estate. I started going to HOA meetings again, sat near the back, brought donuts once. People asked quiet questions in the parking lot, but nobody pressed too hard. One neighbor said, "You made them look real small." I said I didn't make them small, I just stopped making myself smaller. He nodded and looked away like he'd heard more than I meant to say. Maybe he had. On February 2nd, I sold one of my old properties, a lakeside fixer-upper I'd once planned to turn into a rental. I sold it not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to send a message to myself: you are not what they tried to make you. I donated the proceeds, a little over $370,000 to a local legal clinic that helps seniors draft estate protections. I didn't attack my name. I just signed the check as a man who still reads the fine print. The news cycle faded by March. The prosecutor took their time, as they should. By then, my daughter had moved out of state. No forwarding address, no explanation. But I still owned the house, still had the trust, still had my name on every single page. And that meant no one could rewrite my story. Not anymore. Spring arrived late that year. Snow held on like it didn't trust the ground, and the wind stayed sharp well into April. I didn't mind. The cold was honest. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one I'd had for 30 years, with a pot of black coffee, 2 shortbread biscuits, and a manila folder labeled Final, Estate Lock. Everything inside had been filed, signed, duplicated, and cross-referenced. My lawyer joked it was the kind of file that could outlive me. I told him that was the point. At 71, you don't bet on time, you bet on clarity. I walked into the clerk's office on April 4th, carried the file in one hand, a notarized cover sheet in the other. The receptionist, maybe half my age, looked up with that tight smile they reserve for walk-ins. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said. "I'm closing the door on a house that nearly became a grave." She blinked. "Excuse me." I handed her the papers. Probate closure, estate directive finalization, codicil attachment for family restriction clause. She took them. Read the first 2 lines. Her face changed. "Mr. Hale," she said, "we'll process this right away." I nodded. "Let me know once it's certified. I'll be at the diner." I sat at the counter, ordered decaf, no sugar. The radio was playing something old Glenn Campbell or maybe Marty Robbins. 2 old men at the other end were arguing over who made the best cornbread in Fairfield County. I listened, smiled to myself, and stirred my coffee. The waitress brought the check. I paid in cash, tipped 22%. Why? Because it was the right thing to do, not because someone was watching. That's the thing about legacy. It doesn't come from speeches or headlines. It comes from habits. By May, the prosecutor had wrapped the investigation. No formal charges were filed, not yet, but the record was sealed and annotated with what they call pre-disqualification for beneficiary claim. In English, it meant neither my daughter nor her husband could inherit a cent from me without a courtroom and a resurrection. They never apologized again. Not in person, not in writing. The silence suited me. Sometimes the cleanest sound in the world is no footsteps behind you. I got a call from a journalist, once local, polite, eager. Wanted to interview the man who outsmarted his own estate thieves. I said no. He offered to let me review the quotes before publishing. I said, "The story isn't mine, it's theirs. I just refuse to disappear." On June 21st, I signed one final page, Hale Living Trust, no contest clause. It stated, "Any party who challenges the current trust distribution forfeits all rights therein." Signed it, initialed it, hand-delivered it. No one challenged. Not anymore. By summer, I had the house back. Clean, quiet. I replaced the front porch light. Took me an hour and a bruised knuckle. The HOA sent me a thank you email. I didn't reply. I still get ring notifications, birds, mailmen, the occasional stray cat, all innocent things. No voices in the hall. No white pills on the shelf. No whispers near the vent. Sometimes I sit by the window at night, pen in hand, and write lines I'll never send. "You were my daughter. I gave you everything. You gave me a deadline." But then I tear the page out and burn it in the sink. I already wrote everything that mattered with lawyers, witnesses, and permanent ink. People ask what I'll do with the house when I'm gone. I tell them I already decided. I left it to someone who never asked for it. A neighbor's son, third-year law student, helped me fix a fence once. Refused payment. Just said, "Happy to help." He'll get the deed in a sealed envelope with one instruction. Read the fine print, then make it finer. That's my story. No revenge. Just a return. Of control. Of breath. Of name. I don't need applause. I don't need forgiveness. I just needed the paperwork to outlive the lie.